It's a thrill to be here. I'm so honored. And ironically, I grew up in Hinsdale, Illinois, not far from here. So this is home, yes. And my daughter will be attending Northwestern next year, so I'll be back. I'm very excited. She's a classical violist, so this is a big thrill. And my grandfather died in this hospital. So, and I was raised by my grandparents, so it was a big deal. So, sort of choked up a little bit. So, when I met Diane at this Seattle IANDS conference, how many people made it to that conference? It was really lovely, I must say. It's a bit of a love fest. And we really clicked. And we talked well into the night and ended up in her hotel room with her feet propped up on the bed. And she regaled me with stories of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. I have always been so impressed with her and her work. And they were personal, intimate stories of how Elizabeth had shared her teachings at the end of her life with Diane. What Diane didn't know is that on my mother-in-law's deathbed, she handed my husband one book. It was On Death and Dying by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. He was 19 at the time, and it changed the course of his life. So not only was it a moving evening, but it was certainly a clear direction to me of a serendipity, that this was someone with whom I wasn't with her for an accident. This wasn't an accident, and to pay attention. And I'm going to be talking a little bit as I present today, not only about who I am and my background, but how I do what I do. I'm a professional intuitive. Psychic is one of the words that has a taboo meaning in our culture, although I like to use it just to make people jump sometimes. It was not always that way, and I'll share a little bit about history, the history of the intuitive nature that I believe we all have. I am a generalist. I am able to communicate with animals. I'm able to communicate with those spirits on the other side. So death, as far as a near-death experience, when we cross the river Styx, when we go up the tunnel, when we make it to the light and don't come back, what happens then? This is the next step, so I look forward to sharing this with you. I'm a real stickler for evidence, so I want to make sure before I ever communicate with anybody on the other side, I have from 80 to 95% accuracy on information there's no way I can know. And then the message comes. And the message is often very similar. I love you. You're doing a great job. Hang in there. Sometimes it's messages like, get a metal detector, I hid the jewelry in the backyard under a brick. But not that often. Or recently a family with some difficult dynamics, the message was, give her the good pearl necklace. So, yeah, so a little bit of that. This is my book, as Diane talked about. It's illustrated both by me and my 12-year-old daughter, now older, that's my youngest of 3 daughters, who popped out being able to draw like an Italian master. Really remarkable. She's a prodigy. And each story has drawings that illustrate it, which is different than the drawings I do when I do a reading. The reading drawings are automatic, and that's how I teach people to do what I do. Art, drawing is pre-verbal. Language is really primitive in a way. Even though 2 people might have the same mother tongue, there is plenty of opportunity to misunderstand each other. And I'm sure we've all had that experience. This is my logo, and it has a queen bee there. I'm very interested in bees, and communicating with bees is probably one of the most powerful things I've ever done. I'm going to share a little bit about that. So, shall we get going? Do you think we should dim this a little bit to see the screen? Okay. Do I dim it? Oh, she's dimming it. Oh, good. Okay. Thank you, Diane. Beautiful Diane, who made me muffins this morning. She's so sweet. And played the piano to wake me up. And as I was getting ready, I mean, what a joy. It is my premise, and I will be presenting myself, but I also want to give you, for those who are interested, a little bit of a taste of the classes that I teach about cultivating your own intuition. There's nothing special about me. Or rather, we're all special. We all have this ability. We're animals. Although that's not something that is emphasized as if we're different from the rest of the animal kingdom. 96% of the DNA, of our DNA is shared with chimpanzees. 96%. Although I think my first husband might be a little more, but never mind. And we do have a wealth of information. Diane often talks about her guides. I don't see it or feel it exactly in that way, but I do feel guidance and direction, and I get information in my own way. And it is my premise that we all have an individual code. Some of us feel it in our gut more than intellectually or telepathically. It's a gut feeling is pretty common. But we've been taught we're separate beings and that matter is hard. Ironically, we're still taught, my children are still taught in school, this Newtonian model of reality. You're separate from me. But cutting edge physics and in the work, lasers and very high-tech technology is working on a completely different physics premise. Now we're told that matter is 4% of reality, and that entanglement is the norm, that we are all entangled and we're interconnected. Interesting, that's exactly what most indigenous cultures believe. And the ancients believed that too. So maybe we're returning to some place we've already been before. So I say like Yoda, we need to unlearn what we have learned. So with this presentation, I invite you to suspend disbelief and have a good time. I have a lot of fun things to share with you. So let's get going. In your, in my pamphlet that's on the table that you probably have right here, are all the different ways you will be able to get intuition. There are more. I just kept it simple on this, but there are more. And I'll go through them briefly. And in my lecture, I encourage you to use me as a guinea pig. Allow my presentation to help activate your own intuition. Telepathic, knowing someone's thoughts and communicating through thoughts, getting pictures in your mind. Foreknowledge, knowing something's going to happen, precognitive knowledge. Can we perceive the future? Is fortune telling an art, a science, or bunk? Will anybody ever have a hunch that something's going to happen? I'm not going to get on that airplane. It just feels bad. I know that guy's creepy. I'm not going to get in the car. Has anybody had, or had a dream that something was going to happen and it came to pass? Yeah, people are saying, yeah, definitely. Well, that can only mean the future can be perceived. Now, when I'm doing a reading with people, I see a different trajectory for how, from the place where they are, what direction is the most potential outcome. The beauty is that unlike the other animals, we have free will. We have choice. We can turn left or we can turn right. Precognitive déjà vu. What is that? That is a curious thing. The idea that we've been at the same location and the same event for a second time. I haven't heard a convincing explanation as to what that is. Gut feeling. Men are particularly good at gut feeling. It's good in business. That's an opportunity. Don't touch that opportunity. Or butterflies in your stomach or sick to your stomach, that something's wrong. So notice when I'm talking, is what I'm saying making you sick to your stomach? It might be I'm not telling the truth. Or maybe what I'm thinking about, I'm thinking I'm telling you the truth, but it's not. Or it might be that it's not your truth. Tingles up the spine, truth bumps, a knowingness that I'm telling the truth. We're looking for truth here, not right or wrong. That's the ego. So allow me to be your guinea pig. A classic, feeling someone's attention. Women feel this much more than men. Feeling someone's attention, someone watching you. And then you turn around and they're watching you. And usually, men are usually a little surreptitious about it, but enhanced physical senses, smelling fear. You could just smell someone's afraid, or tasting someone's bitterness. When I merge with an animal, I have to use different quality of my senses. For example, when I'm reading an animal, a dog, I'm using more taste and more smell than I have as a human to be able to perceive things. Dogs can smell yesterday. Dogs can smell things we would never think of, complicated things in a way that we wouldn't think are human. So to expand this is important. Symbolic knowledge. Information in symbols. Symbols have power and they are ancient. The circle with a cross through it. You'll see that in petroglyphs. What is this? Also, when you're getting symbols, you're seeing a bird. A bird is an important symbol throughout history and throughout many different cultures. The owl, a harbinger of death, a messenger, a hawk, an eagle, and animals have, as far as I can tell, 3 different layers. They have their personality self. Each animal has a specific personality. Then there's the race or gender of the animal. So you've got a German Shepherd. It's going to have a particular indication as far as what the message is or what the flavor of the information is. And then there's a greater level of knowledge that is the canine wisdom. Dogs really exemplify unconditional love and loyalty. That's not new information. But this is a greater wisdom. The knowing Gnosis that just, and this is what I put in there, and I didn't get this from anywhere. By the way, you'll see in my presentation, I'm bringing information and knowledge from all different places, especially the ancient world. I've been compelled, mostly by the way I was raised. Brilliant, amazing people who were interested in the ancient world. And we're not taught to the extent that that many other countries are taught of the wisdom of the ancients. So there's a knowing Gnosis which just pops in. It's like a packet of information that you get that needs to be unraveled. This is just a knowing. Nobody else can convince you otherwise. You just understand that this is the nature of this information. And dreams. Dreams bring us a lot of communication with those on the other side, as well as guidance, symbolic guidance. So everybody has their own code and the way they get information more clearly. This is artwork from the visionary artist Alex Gray. And when I found this, I was absolutely stunned. It is exactly how it feels when I'm painting. I used to paint for hours on end as a professional artist and muralist. And I painted whole entire spaces so people were living within a painting. And my husband, when he first met me, thought that I had suffered a stroke because it was difficult to be able to articulate, to be able to talk after I'd been painting all day, because I was in that zone. That's how I got there as an artist. Athletes get there in a different way. But it is opening my mind and separating from my functional brain, my left brain, logical, constructing things, and analyzing things, adding things up, measuring things, to my right brain, which is feeling, emotion, imagination, inspiration. And here you see with Alex Gray, you see the person at the upper left, and he's beaming his eyes into the back of the artist's head. I really feel that's true. I feel when we're creating from a higher place, we are receptors, experiencing sort of a vacuum and allowing this greater information to come through. So we'll say my greatest work that I've done has really been when I wasn't in control and I wasn't exactly there. And it's coming from the heart. The information that I get that's most accurate is in a heartfelt space. I think information is transmitted, this is my opinion, through the energy of the heart. This is a drawing I did here of jazz. We were at one of another different daughter, jazz concert. And I saw it as female. I see music as female. And the energy coming out of the head. And we're going to talk a little bit about that energy. And up there is a drawing I did of a client. I've removed the names so that we won't identify who that is. And you can see the energy coming out of her head. I also see that it goes both ways. A little picture in the left. So that's sort of a combination of different places that the same information comes. And that's where I start to see things are interesting, where you've got the same, where it all overlaps in the Venn diagram. It's an indication to me that it's true. And as I said, I'm looking for truth. So this is a mural. The whole room was painted. I wonder if we could we dim the lights just a little more? Yeah. Oh, thank you. This is a dining room that I painted. The whole room was painted, and I was tempted to bring you all the pictures, but I decided not to because this wasn't a presentation of my artwork. But this was oh, that's perfect, thank you. This was my past life. And can you guys see me okay? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Nice. And I was relatively successful as a muralist, in part, I believe, because I was able to interpret what my client was thinking. I was basically reading my client, and I didn't really see any taboo against it. I would tell them, what my impression of what they want, but I would go home, I would produce a rendering, which is how it was done in the olden days before on the computer. It was hand-done mural back in the day. And I would most often get the gig because it was what they wanted. And they thought I was brilliant. And I wasn't brilliant. I was just reading their minds. And it is how I cultivated my intuitive ability, and that's what I want to emphasize, was professionally and used it as an advantage. And I believe cultivating this can be used in a good way as an advantage in a variety of ways. And I believe that's how we're supposed to use it. So this is also a painting of the Columbia Gorge. Please let me know if you're in the Pacific Northwest, around Portland. Please come over for coffee. And good, come down. And I'd love to take you for a day trip along the Columbia Gorge, where Lewis and Clark, Lewis and Clark came down here, and there's different stops along the way. It's really lovely, and there's a wonderful hot springs there, and some nice crafted beer places. It's really nice. So, love to entertain you guys. Okay. So this was Suzanne Summer. This is Suzanne Summer. That was me. My kid said, "Mom, you were so thin." And this is a Fragonard, who's a French painter, sort of boudoirish. And I did masterpiece reproductions, and these are details from a children's bedroom. The whole thing was painted to look like a garden with giant flowers. And this boy's room was painted to look like a stadium. And that bat is actually a real bat that they sliced off and screwed to the wall. So I was rubbing shoulders with the rich and famous. I was doing pretty successful for an artist. At least I was moving along that way. Had no real interest in spirituality. This was a canvas I did with it's huge. I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble with. It's not responding, but you get the gist. This was still have this actually. It's 12 feet by 8 feet. If you come to visit me, you'll see it. So, and I had a certain level of fame. So I was using my ability as an intuitive, but I wasn't necessarily spiritual. You don't have to be spiritual to be intuitive. This is my contention. The guys on the floor of the Chicago Stock Exchange have excellent intuition. I don't know that they're the most spiritual people in the world. I was raised by my grandparents, and my mother, my mother lives with us now. She's 81, a brilliant, amazing artist and art historian and businesswoman. But she wasn't able to raise us. I didn't know my father till much later, and was raised by my brilliant, amazing PhD grandparents. My grandmother was a docent at the Oriental Institute. For those of you who've been there, you'll recognize this. It is one of the greatest museums in the world over at the University of Chicago. And this is a rendering that my youngest daughter did at 12 of Lady Egypt. My grandmother loved Egypt and taught herself hieroglyphics. This is how I grew up. And their great library, that's not my grandparents' library, but that's what it felt like to me as a child. When I couldn't sleep, my grandmother would bring me down and make me a warm cup of milk. And she didn't read Winnie the Pooh to me, as a matter of fact. She would show me pictures of the ancient world. But these books I was unable to crack the code of these books because I had severe dyslexia. I was unable to read. This is actually, I love this picture. This is ancient Mesopotamia, Babylon. Isn't that a great picture? And they dragged me to concerts, which I thought was what was absolutely miserable. Other kids got to go to rock concerts, and I had to go to the Chicago Symphony and the Lyric Opera. And there's a wonderful painting up there by Sargent, and they would drag us to museums all over the world, which I really thought was abusive. As a child, I was always interested in the tea leaf readers. My mother would take me to Old Town Chicago, and they had tea leaf readers who wielded a talent that was power, which was so fascinating to me. They could tell the future. They could tell me what was going on in my life, and I wanted so much to be like that, which was, my family wasn't upset by that. They just thought it was charming. They didn't think much of it. Of course, they hoped I would go into a academic life. So, but the Sibyls of the ancient world were a class of women that were able to predict the future. They were able to perceive non-linear and non-physical entities, and they were able to give advice. No pharaoh, king, general would ever consider going into battle without consulting a Sibyl. And Sibyls, the Libyan Sibyl, the Oracle of Delphi was a Sibyl. As a matter of fact, on the Sistine Chapel, there's quite a few Sibyls painted. There wasn't a taboo in the way it is in this culture. It was a way of life, and it was considered quite seriously. The lady in the painting is a Sibyl, and she's always on a three-pronged chair. 3 is a very important number energetically. And often over some kind of crevasse where there were some smoke or fumes that helped induce some kind of psychedelic or altered state of consciousness. It is very difficult, if not impossible, in my opinion, to access your intuition if you're using your workaday mind. It takes shifting your consciousness. It isn't that hard, but it's I think, mandatory.
5 minutes.
Oh, 5 minutes, okay. I'll tell you the story about, shall I tell you the story about when I saw the world in a different way, or should I leave that for the next, after the break? Now? Okay. I went to the Rhode Island School of Design. And we went for, textiles was my primary major, and we went down to Peru to study the textiles of ancient Peru, which are so complex they don't even know how the ancients did it. It cannot be duplicated today. And if you've ever seen any of the ancient ruins in Peru, has anybody been to Peru? All right, amazing. There's the masonry, that blocks have, you can't fit a credit card or a piece of paper between them. It is so perfect. And they're at very strange angles. They're most ancient. It wasn't until I went to Egypt and I went to the Temple of the Sphinx where I was stunned because I saw the exact same masonry. Anyway, we ended up taking a tour of Peru, and 3 of the young women, 2 of them and I, decided to go down to the Amazon jungle after our tour of study. We ended up right on the Amazon jungle at a place called Puerto Maldonados, which translated loosely is the port of bad luck. We got off the airplane, and the air was so thick, and the feeling was absolutely, it was so different than it is here. It was as if it was electrified. So we found our way. I thought I would be raped and murdered. I didn't think we'd ever make it home. It was so alien. There were no roads, at least in that day. It was just dusty roads and chickens running around. And we were supposed to go to a resort, which as time passed, it was seeming less and less like it was going to be a real resort. In fact, the transportation to this resort was a series of dugout canoes. I mean, dug out of like a tree, and they dug it out. The only thing I could find on the internet was this boat, but it wasn't that kind of boat. And they had indigenous people who were rowing us there. I mean, they were Indians. So they weren't even Spanish. It was a very primitive people. And so we got in the boats, and we were heading to the resort. And when I was in this boat, and it's hard to describe, has anyone been to the Amazon jungle? Right, oh wow, you guys travel a lot. Do you know that feeling where it's like there's a spirit, you can feel it, and everything's interconnected? Amazing, there's giant blue butterflies, Morphos butterflies flying around, and it's just a feeling. That was the first time I had this feeling of some kind of oversoul or intelligence. And as we were in this boat, there was a one gal behind me that we'd come with, and she was behind me, looking at the back of my head. I didn't realize this till later, and I started all of a sudden having deep feelings for a young man at school, blonde hair, handsome fellow, who I thought was nice, but I didn't think I didn't have any feelings for him. And I started knowing conversations that I'd had with him that I hadn't had with him. So I turned around and I asked her about it, and she said, oh yes, she had deep feelings for this young man, and they had shared these conversations. And I realized that thought could be transferred. It was the first time that I realized that we were actually able to communicate or transfer thoughts like that. We finally ended up in the Amazon spa, or the resort, which was a collection of thatched huts. There were little thatched huts, and there were bigger thatched huts. This isn't the resort. I couldn't find it on the internet. Well, I guess, anyway, this is sort of what it looked like, but they were round. There was no technology. I think they might have had a little bit, they must have had electricity, or maybe they didn't, but it was extremely primitive. So we settled down, and there was mosquito netting over the beds, which we had to tuck in. And I got in, and I put my hand behind my head, and I felt something move. I jumped up, and there was, which must have been a tarantula. It was the biggest spider that I'd ever seen in bed with. So do I go outside with the mosquito? And anyway, we've been there several days, and one evening we were partying, and it's amazing how quick you can get used to this. But we were in the main hut visiting, we'd had a meal, we were hanging out. All of a sudden, now it's dark. I'm in my bare feet. And all of a sudden, I heard in my head my friend scream. And I got up, and as if a spirit had entered me, I started running through the jungle. You don't run through the jungle. There's all kinds of stuff on the ground, and there are black leopards in the jungle that are nocturnal. So you don't run through the jungle. But I knew I had to, and I didn't know where I was going, and as if a spirit had entered me, I ran and came to a hut where one of the young women on the trip was in a compromised situation with the guide, Juan Toledo. I still remember his name. And she was so grateful that I had showed up at the exact right time. But it was that experience that taught me that, number one, there are spirits, there's power much greater than ourselves. And number two, that we can work with that power, or the power can take us over for the good. It changed the way that I perceived reality. and it started me on my investigation of the paranormal. So, thank you. I look forward to telling you more after the break. Thank you. So I've been asked to please speak up. So if you can't hear me, just wave. And great. All right. So meanwhile, back in the Amazon jungle, I'm so glad that I had that experience. It is a mystical place, and there's a palpable energy there. It started to inspire me in my already I had that interest, I told you, as a child with tea leaf readers, to investigate the paranormal. And because my family were devout atheists, I had no prejudice against such things, that it was against God. And in our culture, I do bump into this a lot, by the way. And with my clients, too, who are getting important information, intuitive information that can help with anything from surviving, making money, to the right love interest, to spiritual awakening. So I do believe it's important. I really do. It's my conviction. So this is a drawing of my oldest daughter, now in pre-med at University of Virginia. I'm so proud of these girls. Model, but I do see that thought is probably one of the most powerful forms of energy that we have. And why do I say that? When I do readings and I perceive what is going on in people's energy field, as I told you, I'm looking for accuracy. So I'm not getting anything about past lives. Sometimes I do, I don't talk about it a lot because it can't be proven. But what we think about is in our energy field. What we do is in our energy field. What we're planning to do is in our energy field. So if someone is spending a life wishing people well, doing good things, it doesn't have to be exotic, pursuing the higher mind, expansion of their heart, and they glow. You just feel good when they walk past you. If someone is resentful, hateful, into negative things, you can feel it. I see it as holes in their auric field. Sometimes drug use can do. It depends what drugs, but do different things and how they're doing it, as opposed to plant medicine with a shaman or doing meth. Those are two completely different things. But it does affect us, and used surgically, it can affect our future. We can manifest quite well. Let me remind us that right here, this narrow band in the middle, is the amount of light that we perceive. There's a whole lot more. Here's ultraviolet light, X-ray, gamma ray. Down here, infrared, microwave, and radio. So, and with all this Wi-Fi, I do see people affected quite greatly. So there's a whole lot we're not getting. Just being open to the possibility, which is why I said, please consider suspending disbelief. Don't believe a word I say unless it resonates with you. I really want to reflect back to you your own power. Absolutely, you can feel that energy between. Many of us are empaths. Many people have a really hard time going to the grocery store, just listening to the news, because of the level of empathy. And I can talk about that too if you like, if we have enough time. Okay, yeah, baby, this is about 10 years-ish after the Amazon. I had my next, what I call an opening experience, what might be called a spiritually transformative experience in this community. was in Egypt. Yes, there is something about power places, as I mentioned with the Amazon. The pyramid is a power place. As far as I'm concerned, most of Egypt is a power place. Who's been to Egypt? All right. All right. Then those of you who have will recognize down here to the right is the king's chamber. It is in the middle. It is the highest chamber that they've just found another chamber. I'm not sure where it is, but can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. This is the grand gallery going to the king's chamber. It is huge, it's vast, it's higher than the ceiling. It is made with precision blocks. Some of these blocks are 800-ton blocks that come from a quarry in Aswan, 400 to 500 miles away. It's impossible that slaves with loincloths built this thing. It is a technological wonder. We went up. We were on a Greg Braden tour. I don't know if any of you have heard Greg Braden, a wonderful author. And we had 33 people with us, and we went into the pyramid after it closed. We stayed there 2 hours, and we were surrounding the sarcophagus, and we were singing. We were singing a mantra, and took turns laying in the sarcophagus. So what I saw and what I experienced in this sarcophagus was one of the things that shifted my consciousness to understand that there was more. I talk about this in my book a little bit. When it got to be my time, I didn't really think anything of it. I got and laid down in the sarcophagus, which, by the way, is very tall. There's some very tall people. And in the Cairo Museum, there's some very tall painted sarcophaguses that they did find 22-foot mummies in. It's shocking. And whatever this technology is, I can tell you, pyramid, pyra is fire, and mid is middle, fire in the middle. I took my other daughter here, my youngest daughter here 2 years ago for a return trip. I was so disappointed that my cell phone was almost dead because I wanted to take pictures. You're not supposed to take pictures. She held it up as we watched the numbers charge. It's not plugged into anything. Just in the air, within a couple of minutes, certainly less than 5, I couldn't remember because I was so stunned. It was charged 100% from 3%. There's something by the way, no mummy was ever found in this pyramid. No hieroglyphics in this pyramid. It doesn't look like a tomb. And no mummy has ever been found in any pyramid. So I don't know that it is a tomb. I'll just leave that with you. I heard, saw, was shown. So this was a message that was beyond words, from some kind of benevolent being that was pretty powerful. And I was shown the vision of an egg. The egg was green, and the message that was transmitted to me was that the universe is elegantly simple and incredibly complex. The green egg was actually a three-dimensional puzzle. It came with some kind of knowing, and that knowing was so awe-inspiring. This is an image that I found, but it wasn't what I saw, but it was green. So after that, we went to a place. Has anyone been to Abydos? All right, when we went there, we needed a military escort. It was a very dangerous place to go. And getting down into this sacred pool was took some tipping. They don't want you down there. It was subterranean. It's now open because the top of the building no longer exists. It is adjacent to the Ramses II temple, which is covered in some of the finest preserved ancient Egyptian murals in the world. And in stark contrast, this structure, called the Osirian, there's no hieroglyphics on it. And it has the same masonry that you'll see in the Temple of the Sphinx, which is adjacent to the Temple of the Sphinx, and in Peru. You can see it a little bit where the blocks are sort of strangely aligned. This was, by the way, this is an aside, it was for their dying and resurrecting god, Osiris, who was born December 25th to a virgin mother, and died and was resurrected 3 days later, which is celebrated on spring equinox. It's around Easter. Don't you think that's interesting? The priests were known as the Amen priests. Amen. So the traditions that we have today are certainly Christian, yes, but may also have roots that go back to some other traditions. All research that I did after being stunned, the quality of the energy of these power places, I can't emphasize, are so important if you can get there. This place was a pilgrimage site for thousands of years, and the only thing that's carved on it are these, about 9 of them, I think. These, what we call the flower of life, who knows what it is, right up here. And you can see 2 random circles there. They're random, they're not careful, they're not done in a symmetrical form. And they are as if they are laser cut. I mean, what is that? And these waters actually were thought to have healing properties like Lourdes. I was able to run down there and get a little bit, take it home and boil it, and I have it at home, and I use it to clean my energy. Inside the temple, this is what blew my mind. I don't know what this is, so I merely offer this humbly as, and I'm sure many of you already know this, but this has been part of my journey. It is interesting that my grandparents, who dragged me through museums and ancient sites that I considered to be educational abuse, educational and cultural abuse, and I've become a classical artist and used to paint for a living. Now I draw for a living, and am compelled to study the ancient world. So I'm so grateful to them. Here is the inside of the temple adjacent to the Assyrian, and this is a lintel over a doorway. And look what I have. I don't know what you think that looks like. A helicopter, submarine, and airplane. And there was a piece of limestone over the top of that fell down about 30 years ago. So I continued to search about where the ancient ruins were. I was about 6 years old, standing in my grandfather's library, and I was remembering a place called Atlantis. I don't know, I just remembered it, and I, out of the blue, said, "What was Atlantis?" And he said, "It was a mythical place." And I knew that it wasn't because I knew it. I somehow knew it. But I didn't bother to point it out to him because I didn't think it would matter. Here we have a submerged pyramid. I'm not quite sure how big it is. And submerged structures, pyramidal structures, that are in the Caribbean. Is that Atlantis? This has been my path to understand. I really do believe that we are a people with amnesia, that we have forgotten where we came from, but more importantly, we've forgotten how magnificent we are. Yes, we survived death, no doubt about it. So what? So maybe what we should really be doing is living powerfully. And what we have in this mind, body, spirit at our disposal is an incredible instrument. And so I hope humbly that I might be able to offer you a few tools to be able to hone your skills, your instrument, to be able to manifest your best possible life. That would make me so happy. To the right here, the man on the magic carpet. I was raised with fairy tales. I was never taken to Disneyland. They thought that was poor taste. And of course, none of my children have been to Disneyland. So. But they read me wonderful fairy tales. And I thought it was interesting because I'm going to share with you a story that will incorporate a few variations of intuitive information and how it all came together in a real story. I had a dream. And in that dream, there was a quite handsome man on a magic carpet ride who invited me to go see a beautiful waterfall. And of course I accepted. And I woke up with a knowing. I don't know about you, I'm getting chills just telling you the story. I woke up with a knowing that this was an important dream. You know, you have a dream and it isn't just a dream. It's a dream, it's a vision, it's a visionary dream. Shortly after that I got a fortune with a fortune cookie fortune. And my husband told me recently he just found it again. And the fortune said, you will meet a tall, dark, handsome man who will take you for a magic carpet ride. I had put it in my wallet. So shortly after that, I went to Egypt with Greg Braden. And I met this lovely man, and we were, most of the people were lovely on the trip, but we really hit it off. We were laughing a lot, having a nice time. I didn't think anything of it. And he said, you know, I'm at this fabulous meditation. If you're interested, I call it the magic carpet ride meditation. I was like, oh my gosh. I later showed him the fortune I had stuffed in my wallet. We've been married almost 20 years now. And have 3 girls. And it was true. He's a lovely, tall, dark, and handsome man. And he's very magical. It is like being on a magic carpet ride with him. Yeah, happy story. My search for understanding the mysteries that I was experiencing and the overlays of different realities brought me to the world of near death. I read it just made sense to me. I read every possible book I could get on the subject and have an extensive library of near-death study books, which now make up the lending library of Portland IANDS. Which I had to laugh. I was helping Diane bring her books to this meeting, and she's got this huge, it's very heavy, by the way. Anybody just putting it out there. But anyway, I'm trucking it in. It's exactly what I have to do. I have a suitcase with rolling wheels, and we take it in every month for people to borrow. And I couldn't even be, the irony continues. It was a dark time, I would say a dark night of the soul, because I knew there was more, but I couldn't figure out how to get there. Religion didn't fit me. No judgment. I couldn't stuff God into one religion, but I didn't know what it was. And the tunnel experience, the life review experience, made sense to me. It made sense that we are especially with my Buddhist studies and with my work with a Lakota medicine woman, it made sense to me that we're accountable for our actions, our thoughts. It just made sense to me. And it made sense that we didn't necessarily get punished for them, but maybe we didn't get rewarded for them. I don't know, it just fit. So, in those dark times, I would go online to the Seattle IANDS and read their posted testimonies from people all over the world having near-death experiences. So it's such an honor to be associated with this group and to be able to give back to this group that helped me at such a dark time. This painting is another Alex Gray visionary artist. I had permission to use the artwork if I mention his name, and I'm so happy to because he's so remarkable. And this is a painting at the moment of death, of the soul leaving the body, going up the tunnel, this tunnel to the oversoul, or whatever that light is. And that fascinated me, just fascinated me. The egg, the more study I did about this egg, I knew this was a message. Look here, here are eggs right here, photographed by NASA. They're gamma ray eggs. And this egg is an important symbol. The cosmic egg is an important symbol of creation that is ubiquitous across the planet. Isn't that interesting? The Ankh, there we see the egg coming, and the egg is the great goddess. The great goddess we know as Isis. Of course, great Isis's name has been besmirched lately, but she is really the great creatrix. And that creatrix coming from the void, coming from consciousness and descending into matter is a theme that is very common. The cross, that's matter as it comes into manifestation. This took me to the study of the electromagnetics of what I was perceiving. The black and white drawing is my own from the book. The Earth has an electromagnetic field. It is called the Magnetosphere, and it is rotating. You can go to a NASA site and see it, except it's not perfect like that painting. It's blown to one side because of the solar winds. But we have a magnetic field, and the biggest magnetic field is from our heart. And it comes all the way out to our fingertips if you're healthy, even further possibly. I see it as smaller with people who are sick or depressed. But I think that's what I'm reading and perceiving. People who are very magnetic, whether they have a magnetic personality or they're sexually magnetic. That's another intuition which I didn't put on, the sexual intuition. I mean, women can just feel if a man's interested in her. And with men, it's probably one of their most defined intuitive senses. Men can just feel whether a woman is a potential. So they know which woman to spend their time with and have dinner with, which is the greatest potential for success. But I do see more magnetism in these lines when I'm reading someone who has more magnetism, both in their personality or sexual magnetism. And sexuality is it's interesting in our culture, it's so taboo, but there's a lot of energy. You can use your sexual energy in a very positive way to manifest and to create energy, and the ancients knew that. And I've spent a lot of time when I work with couples using Tantra to help them to deepen their connection. My artwork changed. I stopped painting murals. I started painting canvases. That's my kids. They model for me. I wouldn't feed them unless they modeled. That's right. It's funny how we become our parents, isn't it? And I drag my children to museums, by the way, and show them ancient ruins. We just got back from Sedona, where we were showing them some of the cliff dwellers. And they hurried through the sites and went to the car and hung out to listen to music on their phones. This is an artwork that I love. I love Mama Earth. This is my idea of a positive way of working with the situation we've got there. I won't talk about politics, although I have insights about how we can change that, because I don't want you all to get up and walk out. But I do want to say that in general, if we can accept the horrible situation that we're in a much better place to change it. And so that's what I did. I said, okay, we're going to hell in a handbasket. How can I change it with what I've got? What I can paint. So this is what I started with. It's in the collection of Jane Goodall and Joan Borisenko, and my artwork is in also Martin Sheen, not this work, but some other work. And the shift started to happen. This is actually Greg, that I drew Greg at the Seattle meeting last year. Well, we had a leadership meeting. And he's a wonderful guy if you haven't met him. He's so knowledgeable on the subject. I don't know, has he had a near-death experience? He might have, yeah. And I want to say, I'm an excellent example of someone who has not had a near-death experience. But by having spiritually opening experiences and researching the subject, it has changed my life. We had, as soon as I became leader, the first thing I did was called up Atwater, Dr. PMH Atwater, and she Skyped in for our first couple meetings. I was like, yeah, I'm getting the grandmother of this. And we had several people in my group say, I want a near-death experience. And she said, no, please don't do that. You know, that means you have to die. That means you have to go to the hospital, and there's lots of blood around. It's messy. So I don't think it's necessary at all. I'm just saying. And again, a lot of people would like to have near-death experiences so they can cultivate, or in a second, be able to talk to dead people or animals. It's not necessary. If you practice an hour a day, give it a year, like the piano, you'll be able to do it too. Anyway, this is an example of what is seen by the naked eye, and this is an example of what I saw around him. The guy is a lovely, humble man surrounded by angels. He is a magnificent being in the subtle realms. So we judge people by different criteria than I see the truth of their energy. Here's an example of a client, and she's got people who've died on the other side that are with her, supporting you. There's a lot of people supporting you on the other side. Just so you know, you're never alone. Most people have a variety of different energy beings. No one's alone. So that's what one of the drawings from my sessions could look like. This is another drawing of a client drawing, and she was quite enlightened. She was a Native American Indian, or at least had that blood. And by the way, we carry also the DNA with us, in addition to our own energy self, which survives death. So many people I see may not know what their DNA is, but call me back and say, yeah, that's right, I did my DNA, and I in fact am Jewish. There's a lot of Jewish people who don't know they're Jewish, by the way, because of the prejudice that and horrors. The families became a different religion. Same with Native American people too. People ask me about love, relationships, finding a soulmate, their own personal intuitive code, lots of talking to pets. People, and by the way, most of you already are communicating with your pets, and you know that, by the way, and loved ones on the afterlife. This was a client who was a near-death experiencer, and he went through a doorway, and he was told, "You are the light." And this is him in the corner. He also saw trees that were glowing. People are changed who've had near-death experiences. I can most often see that when I'm reading them. I also cannot tell the difference between someone who's had an experience with plant medicine and near-death. Plant medicine is something like ayahuasca, which is a root of one plant and a leaf of another plant cooked for a certain amount of time and drunk. And it's a very unpleasant. I haven't had the experience myself, but I'm told it's not particularly pleasant. But after that, people are able to perceive the subtle realms. So I believe that what's happening is that in this experience, people are crossing that threshold, and they're able to access information, which what came to me, and I believe that other people have come to this, but so I don't take credit for it, but I will say that it came to me quite clearly, is that I believe that's what was happening in Egypt with these boxes, sarcophagus. Not the ones that are painted, but the very simple boxes, and I could go on for some time about these boxes in different places that we cannot replicate. They're so technically advanced. I think that what they were doing was taking some kind of something like the Blue Lotus, which affects your whole system, and journeying back to bring back the information that we all need really to survive. I think I'm going to skip that story. This story here is one of... How much time do I have? Until 5. Oh, good. I also want to make sure that you might have some questions, so I want to do my best to answer your questions instead of... but I'm happy to tell stories too. So this is a story from my book, and these are my illustrations. And the client allowed me to use her real name. Not all the clients did. Her name is Pixie. And she's a remarkable woman who was married for 40-ish years. I can't remember, it's in the book. And she married her high school sweetheart. One of the things when I do a reading I mentioned was that I try to establish an 80 to 95% accuracy to make sure that I can see you. So I wrote a rectangle on paper and I said, "This is your house." And she said, "Yeah." She wasn't impressed. And I said, most houses are rectangles. So then I said in the back room, to the left as you're entering, I can still picture it in my head, there's a room. She says, "Yeah." In that room is a dresser, and it's on the back wall. Then she's starting to get a little more interested. "Yeah." 3 drawers down. There's something in it that's really important. "Yeah." I don't know what it is, but it's circular and it's metal. And there's some kind of fabric over it. She said, "What you're seeing is a coin collection that my father gave me. It is the single most valuable possession I have. And I have my clothes over it to hide it." I said, "All right, let's get going." So I opened the reading as a hawk flew by my window. She was reading her in my house. Hawk is to the Native American Indians, is considered a messenger. That's how I see myself, a messenger. So I thought, okay, I'm on the right track. Just so you know, I'm always questioning myself to make sure I'm doing my best work. I said, well, there's a man here who incidentally visited me in the shower that morning. Spirits will come to you in the shower, at least me, when you're in a meditative state. I screamed, and mind you, they're not interested in yeah. So I said to come back later. Anyway, so apparently this was him. I wasn't sure. He showed me 100 daggers sticking out of himself in a puddle of blood. Now I've got to deal with the big guy, and I don't want to see blood and gore. I can't even watch gory movies. So it was sort of like ketchup. But he had all these daggers around, and that's what the illustration is. It's anger, resentment. And he was giving me the impression that this was caused by Pixie. Now, Pixie is the nicest person. Oh my heavens, so kind. Loves children and plants, and she's an herbalist. She's an amazing, remarkable woman. So I sort of looked at her and I looked at him. Pixie, is there something you want to tell me about? No? Oh yeah, I love him. Okay, well, he's showing me this. Is there something you're doing that might be hurting him? Oh, yeah, I'm cursing him every day, probably. Bad-mouthing him is what she said. She was angry. They had made a deal, a contract, that they would grow old together, and he had the audacity to die young. So she was so mad at him because of the life that she lived and because she didn't have his partnership or his being a father to their sons. It's very difficult for her. So we worked on that, and we worked on changing that, and she changed her way of thinking. But it was a huge aha for me about the power of how our thoughts affect those in the afterlife. And it consistently comes up. This is a theme that I have with my clients. You know, the son of a bitch, my mother was horrible. Whatever negative, focused negative energy we have on those on the other side, it's not a good thing. On the other side, I encourage people, and I think I do a presentation that I call Messages from Beyond, where I do a demonstration and draw what the spirits are in the room. It all comes to me through my drawing. And in that sheet of paper, if anybody wants one, I'll just send it to you PDF, and you can see. I have an outline of how to go about communicating with the spirits on the other side and what they're looking for. Most spirits on the other side would love to have an altar, a picture of them, just as they do in the East. This is common in the East, where people have often little houses. It's called a spirit house, which is often elaborate or can be simple, and porcelain figures of those who, or things that symbolize those who have passed, with daily offerings of fruit and water. That's typical with a Taoist or an animist philosophy. But your thoughts are going right through the veil directly to your ancestors. So just be mindful of that. And oh, this is the coin from the coin collection I do. We had a little bit of, I had a little bit of trouble with the video, so I'm not going to be able to play the video on the bottom. But it was some really big cats that I was invited to read at a cat sanctuary. I do a variety of volunteer work, and this is one of it. And you can see from the lion on the top, this is a 400-pound Barbary lion. And the tigers were 600-pound Bengal tigers. Bengal and Siberian tigers. The Barbary lions are the largest lion breed on the planet. And you can see from the look on the lion's face that it was a little disconcerting, merging with their consciousness, which is how I read anybody, animals or people. When that lion was thinking, I could tell she thought it was a tasty lunch. So So it was a little bit hard to be able to achieve my open consciousness, fighting my own fight or flight. The snaky reptile of fear was really taking over. But I got it together. I had brought an altar cloth. I make my own little altars. An altar cloth that was significant because my kid wove it, and a basalt sculpture of Sekhmet, who is a cat-headed goddess from Egypt I particularly like. And I had some different accoutrements, and I said a prayer. I always say a prayer before I do my work. And I started communicating first with the tigers. And they are so gorgeous, I have to tell you. To see a tiger up close, oh, just the fur and the patterns, they are magnificent. And they're so interesting. They smell, and then when they really want to smell, they go like this. Oh. I don't know if anybody does yoga and does tiger breath, which is like, that's really what they do. I never knew that, and I've done tiger breath for many years. So I was able to get accurate information. The tiger told me, animals typically, from my experience, I'm only speaking from my experience, speak in pictures and feelings. Obviously, they're not going to speak in a language, or if it's a language we don't understand. And told me about a man who had a dark mouth, because I could see that in the picture. And the tiger told me, it was a he-tiger, was talking. The tiger didn't say talking, but making noise, so I assumed he was talking or singing. And he had a good heart. The tiger told me, the tiger could tell that it was a loving man. Isn't that, and animals can tell us by our hearts, that's what they're reading. And that he smelled terrible. And I said, okay, like what? And it was like smoke. So must be tigers don't like smoke. Maybe they're afraid of fire. That would make sense, because they wouldn't hang around a fire pit. So that would be fear for them. So I turned to the gal who became my friend and told her what I had received from the tiger, and she was visibly stunned. She said, there is a man who lives adjacent to their enclosure in a trailer, and he's a bit down on his luck. He's missing a number of teeth, dark mouth. He's a sweetie pie, good heart. He's a chain smoker, smells like smoke. And she didn't know that, but he must kind of talk to the tigers who sing to them. Isn't that fascinating? And then I said, okay, so I was feeling confident. So I said, so the tiger told me it's about something about that big that was orange, and they liked to eat it. He liked to eat it and wanted to know if he could have some more of it. So I told her that, and she said, no, Jane, I'm sorry. She sort of felt sorry for me that I wasn't getting things right. But called me about a week later after she'd cleaned out the tiger enclosure and found pieces of pumpkin that they'd given, in the fall, they'd given the tiger pumpkin to play with, and I guess the tiger liked eating it. So I went on to read some more, but all of a sudden she said, run! So I wasn't sure, I didn't know, I thought maybe this is how I was going to die. You know, the headlines would say, psychic didn't see it coming. But I looked up and there is a 600-pound or 700-pound tiger spraying us. Cat spray. Oh my gosh. But anyway, and in that, just as an aside, there was also a black leopard there. There were the tigers and the lions, which were from Africa and from Siberia and from India. And this, I didn't really know that. I don't know a lot about cats. I do know a little more about them now. But the black leopard said to me telepathically, I shouldn't be here. These aren't my people. And I thought that was really interesting because the cat was from South America, completely different place. The cat also showed me a projection of itself as a man. So I believe what the cat was saying is that it can take the form of a man. Now I do know that shaman in the Amazon jungle can take the form of a leopard, a black leopard. So I thought that was fascinating, but very spiritual. That cat had a huge field. So this is a conversation I had. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. This is a conversation I had with a beehive. I thought I was talking to a queen, but she made it clear that she was both a queen and a beehive. And when she was laying eggs, she showed me, get this, she's laying little eggs. The little eggs are green, and there is a channel of green energy coming down, and she's no longer a bee, she's just a channel of energy. So what I understood is that creation has something to do with this energy. I just thought it was so fascinating. Anyway, with the picture here on the right is supposedly how bees see a plant called bee balm, because they see ultraviolet light. But what the queen bee / hive told me, and you can see here, is that everything emanates a resonance. That resonance includes light, information, and I don't know if it was sound, and energy. So the stars do, the moon does, hearts do, and I really feel like at some point we're going to find out more about this resonance that we're not perceiving at this point. The gal on the bottom is Gabriella, who lives in Ecuador. She and I have joined together in a project, and we're having bee skeps, which are like round, you know, the old bee, how they used to have bees. Bees have been prostituted. The honey is taken from them, and they're given sugar water. And I think it's about to, so this is something that I can do, by the way. We're going to hell in a handbasket? Okay, I can do something to save the bees. So we're having indigenous women weave these skeps and raising money to support. It's all women made, it's all natural, and I'm a beekeeper and helping the bee community in this way. I could do a whole show on bees. Has anybody read The Secret Life of Plants? Yeah, it came out in the 70s. I don't know why it's not mandatory reading in high school. But what Peter Tompkin did was he put a lie detector machine up to his ficus plant. This is so fascinating. And what he did was he lit a cigarette, or took a lighter, I can't remember, and burned one of the leaves. And the lie detector went bonko, like that. And then he tried another experiment where he thought about burning the ficus plant, but didn't, and walked up to the ficus plant, and the lie detector went like this. Isn't that amazing? The consciousness of plants. This is a Kirlian photography of the energy emanating from a flower and from a leaf. And here you can see the leaf has been cut, but the flower still behaves as if the part of the leaf is there. So if that's a leaf, and the plant, the ficus plant remembered that he was the one that burned it. So plants can remember us. So if plants can remember it, animals can remember it, we're underestimating the intelligence of the sentient beings around us. This is an animal communication story that's really touching, but before I start that, I feel I feel like there's some questions that might be good, that might lead us into the right direction. Yeah.
I don't think that this will lead into what you're just talking about, but I've always been curious. I've read a few different times that, let's say, with Peru and the pyramids, that possibly outer space, outer space beings were here, and I don't know if you have any opinion on that.
Yeah, outer space beings built the pyramid. Well, we're at a stage that's advanced enough to be able to look at our DNA. Yeah, we have, our DNA has been meddled with. So, if you look at, we've been, our DNA has been adapted. So I think we're going to get to the point where we recognize that we are citizens of a greater community. I'm in an area where there's a place called Seti, and it's right at the foot of Mount Adams. And there's supposedly some kind of alien base on Mount Adams. And I've been hearing about that for a long time, so I decided I really want to go see this for myself, because I don't think we should believe anything. I think we should figure it out for ourselves. So I went up there, and there were an interesting collection of people, I will tell you that. People from all walks of life. There was a guy from Israel, there was a housewife from Colorado, there was young hippie kids, all different kinds of kids, all kinds of people. And we were about to commence with some program during the day, and one of the young kids came in we all had to camp, it's pretty funky up there, and he was wide-eyed. And he brought a video and he said, I just shot an alien, photographically shot an alien. So took the camera and plugged it right into the TV screen. So there was, and this was maybe over 10 years ago, their editing equipment wasn't something he could have done. And we watched as an orb, and the orb had some kind of geometric pattern in it. He'd set up his camera to watch the sunrise in the field. The field is, by the way, where in the evening with goggles that are night vision goggles, military grade night vision goggles, so you can see what's going on, so forth. This orb went right across the screen. And I'm like, well, I don't know. It could be a dandelion thing. I mean, it didn't look like that, but that didn't convince me. And then we watched the second one. It came right in front of the screen. It turned and went into the ground. I don't know if they were aliens, but I certainly think that we are a race with amnesia. So maybe it was us who built the pyramid when we had high technology. I mean, there's 170 odd flood myths in different indigenous communities all over the world. So let's assume there was a big flood. And the geological record tells us there was a big flood. As a matter of fact, the gorge that I painted was created when there was, during that time, which was about 12,000 years ago. So maybe we've forgotten. What if our great-grandchildren, if some flood happens or some catastrophe, and we lose all aspects of society, and all that we have is the ruins of New York City and the ruins of Los Angeles. I always wonder what they'll think. Because our most important buildings are shopping centers. But anyway, never mind. But I really think maybe it was us. Yeah.
Have you ever been aware of any correlation of people with Rh negative blood?
I'm not an expert in that, but there's a couple of anomalies of different kinds of people in the Basque people. I know what you're talking about, but I think the secret will be that we'll be in our bodies. I think we'll be able to determine that for sure. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
The first one is, have you ever had the inclination to go to Delphi in Greece? And my other question is, do animals know when a human can communicate with them, or like, are they like, oh, why bother? She's not, you know, she's not listening. You know, oh, you're listening like that.
Yeah. Okay. So those are two really good questions.
What was it?
Okay, I'm going to start with her second question first, and it's about animals, and it's a really good question. Do animals know that there are people who can communicate with them versus people that can't? And they say, I'm going to talk to her because she's listening. And those people, they're not paying any attention. They're talking to me in baby talk. What do they think I am? I would say yes. Because when I merge with an animal's consciousness, they recognize that I'm merging with their consciousness and they pay attention. So, absolutely. The animal, I believe the animal knows. Oh, and you don't have to be in the same close proximity with an animal. You can merge with consciousness of an animal or a person that is in a different place and get accurate information. So, and the accurate information is really important because then you know that you've made contact. Her other question is, have you ever been to Delphi? I'm planning to do some preparatory work for my next book, which will be in Delphi and Ephesus and this summer, and I'm going to be going there and doing psychic work where I'm connecting with the people in these power places. And Delphi was a really, really important place. Well, Ephesus was too. There's nothing like being in these places, but you don't have to go to Europe to go to these power places. We were at Chaco Canyon. Has anyone been to Chaco Canyon? All right. And it's interesting because it's not that far. It's in the U.S., and it's really hard to get to, by the way. I mean, you get to the area and you drive, but there's 16 miles of road with huge potholes. I mean, it's difficult to get there. But once you get there, I was stunned at the sophistication of the architecture, and it all aligns with celestial events. It's exactly right angles on the architecture. It is not unlike Peru and Egypt in the architecture. This was an epicenter. Oh, and they found really big skeletons there too.
Where is it?
Chaco Canyon.
Where is it?
New Mexico. Yeah, go. And because it's here. And Sedona. Sedona has some very powerful places. We were just there last week. And there are anomalies. There's different vortexes around, and you can tell from the trees. There's some trees that are straight up and down, and then you go here, and they're totally corked around. But I used to go there and draw a blueprint for the next year. Very easy to do. Because you're in these fields, and it's this red dirt, which is chock full of iron. And iron, changes. The information, it comes easily with iron. I was able to climb Mount Sinai in Egypt to watch the sunset one day, a lovely Tuesday, and the energy on Mount Sinai is powerful, and it's all iron, highly charged iron. So, yeah.
I have a question. I believe it has happened to me. Can the other side or someone that's passed communicate through the phone?
So can someone on the other side communicate through phone? From my personal experience, yes. And I'll tell you, I inherited, I didn't inherit a lot, but I did inherit a lot. One of them was an ancient glass vase that was ancient Roman vase. I didn't pack it powerfully, and it ended up breaking into a lot of pieces. And I wept, and then I got the crazy glue out, and I thought, okay, so the value's gone, but it's still sentimental because my grandmother left it to me, so I'll glue it together. I did a pretty good job. And it was about 2 in the morning, and I was just finishing it up, and the phone started ringing, and it wouldn't stop. The only problem is the phone wasn't plugged in. So I knew it was something. I imagined what it was is my grandmother calling to say, good job, it's okay, don't worry about it. But yes, I think spirits can enter electronics and communicate that way. I've personally experienced that. They can also enter animals pretty regularly. So all of a sudden your dog isn't your dog anymore, it's Uncle Bob. Whoa! You know, or all of a sudden you keep, and we've all had that, you're like, whoa. Or a bird. Lots of times spirits enter birds, and this is throughout history. This is a common theme in fairy tales and so forth. I remember when my grandfather, who died in this hospital, died, and I was back in Portland, and I kept seeing owls, and I mean an owl that wouldn't move not just but I mean an owl in the middle of the morning. Owls aren't out in the daytime. And I stopped the car and got out to look at the owl. And an owl was his symbol, by the way. So, yeah. Any other questions? Yes?
Do you believe that the government is suppressing the information that can about UFOs because they wouldn't know what to tell you about how to defend, then if people came to invade?
Right, so is the government not telling us about UFOs? It's really funny. The UFO issue is really one that can make you seem really nutty really quickly. So I'm at the point now where I really don't care. So I want to talk about it. But, people really, they back up. They're like, oh, okay, well, gee, gosh, I gotta go. But I'm not sure about whether the government isn't telling us about UFOs, about attacking us. I think that, and I'm not sure who it is, and I don't know about the government, because the near as I can figure, and this is the only political statement I'll make, it seems like the big money is funding both parties. So probably a third party might not be a bad idea, but I feel like there's different layers of power is what it feels like, and that there is some kind of power behind the power that we can't see. And that somehow we're not supposed to know about, and I don't know if it's aliens or if it's us in the past that had advanced technology. I think it was us. I really do. I think we are a race that has forgotten or hasn't been taught, because when I go to these ancient sites, I see very clear evidence of sophisticated. I haven't even shown you the pictures of the Serapeum. You might want to look it up. The Serapeum in Egypt was just opened. It took 17 years to get it open. And they have sarcophaguses, which no person was ever found in, or cow. They call it a sarcophagus for a cow, but a cow was never found in it. And there's no hieroglyphics on any of these. And the precision, and the stone is as hard as a diamond, and the precision, you don't have it's all carved out of one piece of marble that came from hundreds of miles away. So if we can't emulate this technology now, and let's assume it wasn't reptilian aliens or insectoid aliens or little gray aliens, maybe it was us. And if we've lost that technology, I mean, we had an engineer on this journey at the Serapeum with a right angle, looking at this structure, and he said, we can't do this now. So that in itself is interesting, but I mean, we can fly to the moon. It's only a 3-month journey. Why are we not on the moon? I don't know. I always wondered that. Yeah.
You mentioned practicing for an hour a day and exercises.
Okay. So, okay, back to intuition. We can develop an intuition that is functioning, working advantage in a variety of different ways, whether it's in whatever subject, whatever category in your life. So the first thing that you want to do is let your subconscious know that you're ready to go. So a really handy thing to do is making sure that you make an appointment with your subconscious every day at the same time. Joseph Campbell talked about meeting the muse. And that requires every day sitting for an hour, typically in the morning. And he talked about writing. So if an hour's too much, we're all really busy, make it a half an hour. If a half an hour is too much, make it 15 minutes. Make it so simple that you succeed. And what I like to do is take a moment to center. Many people meditate by listening to music or a guided meditation, and that's fine. But what we want to really do is not be distracted with what's outside of ourselves, but to bring awareness to the body. Breathing is really your easiest way to do it. And I have people take their right hand and put it on their heart and just breathe in and out. And as your chest is rising and falling, say, rising chest, falling chest. Rising chest, falling chest. So that's bringing yourself to center. And then the first assignment that I give people is to get a notepad that has no lines on it. And on the right side, if you're right hand dominant, you write a question to your subconscious. And then on the left side, you answer it with your left hand by drawing a picture. That's simple. The other thing that's really important to do, and you don't have to do in that hour, is take this list and start to become aware of your intuition. Your intuition is working all the time, trying to keep you alive and safe, and make you aware of opportunity. You know, that means notice when, and it's all in the physical senses. So notice when you feel tinkling on the back of your head. You're sick to your stomach. So you're still here. Some people have left. So the people that have left might have had to go someplace, or they might have felt this information isn't real. This isn't right for me. So their intuition is giving them accurate information and telling them, giving them some direction. You're still here. There's something that's important for you to get here. This is a window of opportunity, and you've recognized that. You're following your intuition. Sometimes it just takes showing up. And so start to notice when you get sensations on the palm of your hand. You get truth bumps. You might get a chill like that up your spine. And then you're starting to build a rapport. then your subconscious know you're ready to communicate. And the other thing is you're starting to build a vocabulary and to understand the language that you're communicating with yourself. Yeah. So that's the basics. That's the scales of learning to do it. After that, it starts to get a little more sophisticated. But suspending disbelief and trusting that anything is possible, not limiting your thoughts. I often see over people's heads a reality box. And in that reality box is how people determine reality to be. Sometimes I'll see it open on top and people are growing out of it. Sometimes it's cracked. Sometimes it's a bigger reality box that people keep expanding. We all have ideas of what's possible and what's not possible. So the more that you can allow anything to be possible, the sooner and the more broad your intuitive direction will be. Yeah.
I may be on the wrong path. This is my first time coming. But instead of amnesia, could some of this be explained by quantum theory or time overlapping, time differences? Do you have any insight into what is time, and are we really going back? Are we going forward? Are we merging? I mean...
Right. Well, sure. Thank you. That's a great question. She's saying, are we really a species with amnesia, or are we, or is there a quantum explanation to this? Both might be right, because it doesn't have to be either one or the other. And hold the idea that we're a species with amnesia, that we've forgotten how powerful we are, that we're actually little godlings in training, maybe. Without trying to define what it is, that way, more information and more power will be able to emerge from within you and be attracted to you. As far as time, we are still, the superstition of materialism is still the norm. That is how kids in school are still trained to believe that this is hard, that cause and effect are in play, and that time is a single arrow moving from the past to the future. That is not the case in current string theory, where there are multiple realities and all happening at the same time, and that all time is existing at the same time. It's just a matter of where we focus. I say the more that we can escape from the confines of this materialistic idea, the more you can control it. I go back in time and influence myself in the past, leaving a marker in a situation so that I can feel it. And I can actually feel myself now being affected by my future self influencing me now. I currently had a situation where a neighbor girl was kidnapped and taken to she was a high school senior, taken to a recovery center, rehab center, whatever. And I wanted to intervene and try to help, but it's none of my business really, and what can I do? But I got very clearly I was not to cross the line of helping at a certain point. And what I realized is I was being influenced by my future self, because I could tell the texture of how I was getting this information. I was getting a voice telling me information. So that is a preposterous thought if you are considering time happens only one direction, going from the past to the future. And I've traveled through meditation to the future on many occasions, out of curiosity to see where we're going. And probably in about 100 to 200 years, there's not going to be as many of us here, that's for sure. And we're going to be I see bubble houses. I see bubble over domed houses. So it's a very different future. So yes, I believe we can travel. Because I do, but if you don't think that you can travel, that's okay too. Did that help?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool, great question. Yeah.
I have a question. And we know moment when we receive some information and we can come back to life. Back to our planet back. What was your reaction when you received this information? You have to come back to life in this planet back.
How did I react to the idea that I had to come back to life from dying? Was that your question? Yeah. I've actually never died, so I've had spiritually transformative experiences, but I haven't physically died. But I did go from believing that the superstition of materialism to an awakening that we are a spirit having a physical experience in a slightly different way. And it is so invigorating to me because because I understand that I don't die and that I'll see you again, hopefully in Portland. But also that I'm excited to be here. I'm so excited to be here and healthy and be able to communicate the message that, of course, we don't die. I think you know that. But also that we are incredibly powerful beings, that animals are sentient beings, that we can affect change and we're much more powerful than we believe. Those are some of my messages. And it's wonderful and it's exciting. And I love being here. I love the beauty. I love the beauty of this earth and I revel in the moment. Which I think is a really important message is if we don't die, then what? How are we going to live? Right? Hold on, just one sec. There was somebody over. Yes.
This is kind of going back to your experience in Egypt. I might have missed it, but what did you experience when you went into the office and then came out? You said that you were just taking turns going into the office and
Right.
coming out. What was your experience?
Right. That's when I heard the presence of this voice that told me about how the workings of the universe as an egg. I have a really funny story about someone else who went there. I don't know that we'll have time, but it's a powerful thing getting to Egypt. If you can do it, there's plenty of trips. I hope to be doing a trip in a couple of years, and also one to Greece. But it's not that hard, it's not that dangerous. I mean, come on, we're from Chicago. You know, it's really cool once you get there. It's a third world country, really. It's pretty inexpensive. But these are power places, and we don't know how long. You can still get inside the pyramid, and there's other places there. And just, trust yourself. You're going to feel it. You're going to, if it doesn't change you, I'd be surprised. But, yes.
Were you aware of your psychic abilities before your spiritually transformative?
I was aware of some of my psychic abilities. I could tell when grown-ups were lying. I was able to leave my body. I was compelled by tea leaf readers. But no, I didn't see dead people in the crib. I couldn't levitate. I'm not a natural psychic. No, but I have achieved a pretty high in the field. I've achieved a very high accuracy by practicing, like playing the piano, because I approached it from a pretty pragmatic way. But what I have two things. I've got severe dyslexia. I can barely read, which is so funny. I wrote a book. By the way, your wounds. Oftentimes, the talent of your intuition falls in the crevice of your wounds. really important. The wounds are a great, a key to your advantage. And when my wounds, yeah. And you could be a physical wound, it could be a psychological wound. Mine was physical. Whatever is your deepest wound is what the key and the doorway to your talent, your psychic talent. Yeah, it's your talent, your psychic talent. And mine would happen to just be my psychic ability. Oh, and I painted for years, so I didn't mean to, but I just built this muscle to be able to open to some information that was beyond words. It all just sort of came together as if it were scripted. I have time probably for another couple of questions. Yes.
Two questions. One is, are there any anti-gravitational places in the Earth? Somebody talked about some place in Michigan where the gravity, there was no gravity in the atmosphere.
Anti-gravitational places on Earth. Go ahead and go home and Google gravitational anomalies on Earth. You'll get a whole map. And you'll see gravity is not a constant. And there's different places that have more or less. And it changes. Interestingly enough, there's much more electromagnetic activity on the Earth. It's spring and fall equinox. They do a whole program on the solstice and equinoxes. It's fascinating. The ancient people were not morons. This is a time when you will be highly affected by these things. Yes, and what was it?
And he's related any of your past life experiences to the present time.
Have I related any of my past life experiences to my present? I used to be really interested in past lives and did hypnosis and to investigate. I know I've been burned at the stake. I can feel that. I know that I've been with my family members before. I can feel that. But I sort of got distracted with this life and got busy and didn't spend too much time. We have 5 more minutes.
I have a question that follows up on that.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about the time not being linear or different lengths to the future than your current
Yeah.
life. So with the whole thing of past life, there's a belief that you carry a trauma that you might have, such as fear of flames or fear
Right.
of closure or fear of whatever. Do you feel that you could then, if you're aware of your past life, able to heal those wounds if you're saying in mind that life may not have even existed because of this is the kind of linear?
That's a really good question. If time isn't linear and time's circular, how can you go back in time? And what about past lives affecting this life?
Or maybe your ability in this life
Right.
to help you with the trauma that you're going to face in the past life.
That's right. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. I mean, it happens all the time. People go into past life regressions and they experience themselves on the battlefield and being run through by a sword. And actually, that's my husband's story. And he went and he had a scar right here in his chest, and he saw who did it and came out. And I can't remember what he did. I think he just came to peace with it. It might have been. The scar went away. And the heart pain went away. He went to so many doctors to figure out what happened, so that can happen. Hold on just one sec. So we've got 4 more minutes. What I'm going to do is, would you like me to sign books here or out there? In the lobby. I'm going to sign some books if you'd like to get a book. I also want to say that we have a waiting list for people who'd like readings, but I don't know that will work. I'm happy to extend a discounted my rate for you guys. So I do lots of work on Skype or Zoom. Just call me and let me know that you're a member of Chicago IANDS, and we'll take care of you. We can do that, so no worries. And then when I'm done signing, we're going to be going out to dinner, I think. I hope that you guys can come, and I'd love to answer any more questions afterwards. And I think I have time for one question. Who was it? Yes?
What are the modern day representations of that profound issue that you feel are spiritually affecting us most? Sorry. How is modern day pyramid energy helping us?
Oh, I sleep under a copper pyramid of poles of 51 degrees, which is the same degree as the Great Pyramid. And I meditate under a Nubian pyramid, which is very high. You can order those. I have a bunch of tools that I use as far as stones, which is a whole nother thing. You can utilize this power, and it's a big help. Thank you very much.